Who are the surgeons? Most of the people in our life like to lead someone. A sergeant in the army is the first starting link of a leader who can lead. It's like you become a sergeant of a unit and you seem to have a square of land and 10 slaves. Okay, that's a joke, but actually a lot of people really enjoy managing people. And when you later see the result of your good leadership, how people do what they didn't know how to do before, it gives inspiration to develop in this direction. My call sign is Bandurist, and I am the chief sergeant of the anti-aircraft artillery battery. A sergeant in the army is the person on whom the management of the unit depends. For example, I, as a master sergeant, am responsible for the combat training of the personnel, the condition of their weapons, military equipment, and even that everyone looks decent. The sergeant is closer to the soldiers than the officer. It's like an intermediate link, because not every soldier, for example, can fully express his opinion or point of view when approaching an officer. It can look strange. You're a man, he's also a man, you can go and ask. But in the army there is an internal sense of hierarchy. The greater the difference between your military ranks, the more uncomfortable it's to communicate. Sergeants are a node that connects everyone. Having learned a problem from a fighter, he has experience in how it should be solved. Another important thing is that the sergeant knows these soldiers, knows who can be trusted, who is prone to what. Therefore, the sergeant himself can give the day off but say that you must be there tomorrow because, well, we have plans. And then the sergeant simply reports on everyone to the officer, whom and where he let go under his responsibility. And trust and respect between an officer and a sergeant is also important here. Most relationships are built on trust and some previous achievements. If I know from experience that I can rely on this fighter, then I am sure that he will not deceive me. Accordingly, and I will not deceive the officer before who I am asking for a soldier.
Кажу ж команду. Держу! Чека одного и полтинник. Решт. Двигаем. С руки. 7, 8, 9, 10, 1. 5, 4, 6, 7. Это канал, можно вопрос.
What do sergeants teach? A sergeant usually teaches basic things in the military. How to handle a weapon, what you should never do, how to survive in any conditions. Sergeants teach the simplest first aid, applying tourniquets, bandages, tamponade and the like. The sergeants teach the characteristics of weapons and equipment. In short, the sergeant gives a long practical course to the young soldier, so that every soldier is ready for military life. When it comes to any unit, at the first glance, seeing the behavior of the soldiers, you understand whether their sergeant is involved with them or not, and what they know plus or minus. Is the equipment fitted to one? Is a plate carrier or a helmet floating around on him? Is the equipment fitted to it? Is there a plate carrier or a helmet floating around on it? It is already clear from this that the soldier will be ineffective in combat conditions. After 3 minutes of running, he will cry, "Commander, I'm sick." A soldier's knowledge is immediately reflected in his daily life and behavior. If a soldier is adequate, trained, he behaves accordingly in every action. and if not, then he needs to be retrained. Now the basic combined military training of a young fighter is from 2 weeks, and the instructors, they're present everything very intelligently and correctly. I know this from my soldiers. They have a good impression of the course where they were taught to shoot, disguise, make shelter, use different types of weapons and the like. There is no such thing as if you're a shooter, then a Kalashnikov assault rifle is given and that's it. You don't see anything else, especially since we now have NATO-style weapons, which I was not even taught to use. But now new soldiers are being taught this. Preparation now, I'm sure, is not worse but better. The team tries to do its best. We're a combat brigade, we have tanks, artillery, and that says something. But you always want better, you know? For example, I was surprised once in war zone we had a problem with the Dishika machine gun. I tried to fix it, but I hadn't held it in my hands for 3 years before that. I did different things, but nothing helped. A young soldier came up to me and said, "Sir, let me do it." A couple of seconds, he took it apart, clicked it once, fixed everything, put it back together, and it's already working. I was like, wow, this is cool, I like this. Who are the Ukrainian instructors? They're a trained sergeant with combat experience. I don't know all of our brigade's instructor department, but many of them. And all those I know are those guys who passed the defense of Kyiv, Rubizhne, Severodonetsk, Lysychansk and other front areas, and then they already became instructors. Some of them became instructors due to the fact that they can no longer perform combat tasks in full due to the effects of injuries, but want to bring maximum benefit to the army. It's not easy to prepare a soldier well, because the training period is minimal and a lot of knowledge must be invested. Instructors get away with what they have. They improvise to make classes interesting. Plus, during classes, people should also be given short breaks of 20-30 minutes. They gather in a circle, take off their armor and helmets, sit down to relax. And in the center of the circle, the instructor tells combat examples from his own life. Because the examples from the book do not always work in life, but the examples from this particular war almost always work. The problem is that the war is changing rapidly, and you have to keep up with these changes. If during my previous rotation last year we were afraid of tanks and mortars, now when an enemy mortar fires, we're not even afraid, because the percentage of hits is not high. FPV is much more frightening. That's why the instructors have to prepare for this even during the training. There are almost no things in war that you won't need. You may not need it on Monday, but on Saturday you won't survive without it, you know? That's it. It's very difficult to find this balance, what to give, what not to give, because you have to teach to shoot and dig and move and disguise and a lot of other things. It's difficult in such a short time. That is why there is basic military training, but then in the units, sergeants on the ground add all the knowledge that is missing. And it can last for half a year or a year. A lot now depends on the competence of this sergeant. What's the problem with the sergeants? Sometimes men who served many years ago are mobilized for the positions of sergeants. They knew how to fit armor properly in 1983 or 1992, but even the equipment was completely different then. And here I see a 45-year-old sergeant, but his combat experience is close to zero. In this case, you should give a chance, but if a person doesn't fulfill his duties, he shouldn't be in this position. I'd rather put a soldier in that position and he'll handle it better than a sergeant. And this is a fairly common practice in our brigade. If you are adequate and can solve urgent needs here and now, then you should do it. not someone who has a higher military rank. Because ineffective management again leads to more significant problems. And this sergeant could be told that he didn't manage, so a soldier will be in command. At least once a year, it's necessary to organize training to provide new knowledge from various specialists for sergeant as well. Figuratively, if you don't tie your shoelace before the race, you will stumble and fall, then waste even more time trying to heal your bruised knee, tie the already torn shoelace, and start running again. Therefore, everything must be checked before the start of the race. Losing people is much worse than replacing them.
Мягко. Что такое? Нужно дышать?
Там нормально, тільки воно тільки вліво уходить.
What is the role of the sergeant in battle? The role of the sergeant in combat at this stage of the war is to direct the battle on the ground. How does defense work? There are drones in the air that give the overall picture, and there is a headquarters that controls everything. The sergeant is the man in the trenches. He should know the area perfectly. He must know the topography very well, know who's located where the enemy is, and where adjacent units are. Taking everything in account, the sergeant controls the battle on the ground. When you are told that an enemy group of such a large number is coming towards you from such a direction, you must stop them. The sergeant decides how and where to set fire points, who will open fire first, what will be the measures from the flank, and the like. If we're talking about maneuverable defense, then the sergeant is now 100% in command of the battle. The sergeant is obliged to make decisions himself. If he will make adequate decisions, he should be rewarded for this with some next rank or additional vacation. I'm sure the vacation will be best for most, because you should always have a recharge. Motivation and discipline alone will not get you far. The best sign that a defense is built correctly is when your soldiers don't die. It's ideal when, in addition, you were able to set everything up so that when you're not there, everything works just as efficiently. This is the best reward for me as a sergeant. Look, I calmly explain once and we do so. If we don't do so, I start shooting at helmets. The story is like this. If he just goes around the corner, he is injured or killed. If you go after him, you will be shot. The same result. So how to go? Hold each other by the bulletproof vest and move close behind each other. Anyone who notices something pulls the previous one back. When you know that two occupants are sitting in front of you, you will not run forward quickly. We will carefully shoot with aim. Let's repeat all the actions again, slowly. What is the motivation to become a sergeant? The motivation to become a sergeant is if you see that there is some kind of total horror around you, you should manfully take everything into your own hands and start changing it for the better. It sounds pompous, but the scheme works. We must, as we were taught, fight for our place under the sun. If you think you can make useful changes, you have to grab it and do it. First of all, there is a very shaky general opinion of society and the army. How will it all end? How long will it last? We need to get satisfaction from our small victories and fuel for our next decisions and movements. Because if you don't find something for yourself that will move you, then the day after tomorrow you will hug a glass of alcohol with tears on your face. Something like that. If you can, if you even just think that you can do it and at least change something for the better, take it and do it. I always stand in front of the mirror and say to myself, if I can, I will do it. And I advise this to all others.